Welcome to Love Yourself, the podcast where we break down the reasons why you aren't losing weight and help you discover confidence, self-worth, and resilience all along the way. Weight loss isn't a knowledge problem, it's a thinking problem, and I'm here to show you how to lose weight with your brain, not another diet plan. So as you listen, notice what resonates with you, and if something clicks or you want to go deeper, I would love for you to book a call with me right after the episode. If you can't figure out why weight loss is such a struggle, I am so glad you found me, because you know deep down that weight loss really isn't about the food, but you wonder why you keep eating when you're not hungry, or you reward yourself with chocolate once you've lost 5 pounds. This episode is going to be so helpful. My name is Dara Thomason, and this is Love Yourself Thin, episode 256. How self-sabotaging patterns are preventing you from losing weight. So today I want to specifically talk about weight loss and the self-sabotage patterns. Now, you can go ahead, if you didn't do the quiz from last week, I've also linked it in the show notes, where Dr. Judy Ho did a great job of creating this worksheet on, it's a quiz on, are you self-sabotaging and why? And spoiler alert, she talks about how our low self-worth, our low shaky self-concept, our maybe internalized traditions, like the things that people said as you're growing up, like you're not good enough if you didn't do well on your tests. The fear of change or the unknown. Maybe you had a really insecure parent and they kind of carried on that anxiety to you, or maybe there's that excessive need for control. I remember myself just growing up with seeing all these control freak women in my life, and men, where they had to try to control everything for them to feel good about themselves. And I knew that pattern didn't look great, and I knew it wasn't helpful. And so I didn't want to repeat that for myself. So I would encourage you to go and do that quiz and just start looking for yourself. Get curious of, what are my patterns and where did they come from? Because I know this for sure. Our parents didn't intentionally say, I have a great idea. I'm going to make my kids insecure and upset and, doubt themselves. No, I know for sure that our parents did the best they could with what they had. But when you know better, you do better. And we definitely have a combination of, nurture versus nature. And what are those patterns that are passed down? And yesterday I was watching, for my homework that I was doing, I watched a really interesting TED Talk, which I can include it here as well, on epigenetics. And so it gave an example of these mice, and if the mama mouse, if she groomed her kids and she licked them a lot, because that's showing love, if they were well licked, then they had the mice growing up had better adaptation skills and strategies. If they didn't have that same love and attachment at a young age, then they were less adapted, they ate more, they were lazier, they weren't as curious, and they weren't as successful as the other mice. And that's the same thing with humans. And so I wanted to talk about, how does that relate to weight loss? Now, there's a couple of aspects here, but at the very top of the weight loss situation that we find ourselves in is that the reason we're overweight, there's only one reason, and it's because we're putting too much food in our mouth than our body needs. Now, when you think about your gas tank in your car, imagine if every time you passed a gas station, you had this compulsion to fill up your gas tank. So you pull over and you put the nozzle in, and you only can get like 1 or 2 liters because you haven't really driven that much. And the car is saying, we're full, we've had enough. But if you keep trying to insist to put more gas in, the car doesn't have the capacity to hold on to all that extra gas, unless you went and got some jerry cans and you'd fill those up and then you would carry those around. So our body, though, is different. Our body, if we're eating food and we say, oh boy, this is a lot. We don't actually need any more of this energy, but you've just filled up your body. And so the body says, well, we can't use this energy now, but we can. So it converts that extra energy into fat. Okay. And 1 pound of fat is approximately 3,000 calories. So, and evolutionary wise, it was actually really smart that our body did that, because we didn't have a grocery store. We didn't have this endless food supply. We had to go out and, gather mushrooms or leaves or roots, or we have to go fishing or hunting. And that was the only way that we could eat. So in times of plenty, we would eat as much as we could, and then our body would actually store all of that. And then in those lean times, our body is designed to go access that stored fat, which is amazing. But now, we're in, this day and age where not only do we have a lot of food, but we also have superfood as far as like super calories. So you can eat one chocolate bar and it will give you energy for a long, long time. So our evolution, the way that our brain works, is hasn't quite kept up to the way that we've used food, because technically speaking, when we eat food, I love saying technically speaking. I feel like so technically speaking, when we eat food, we get a dopamine hit, because our body a long time ago, every time we would eat something, so let's say it was like a bitter root, or it was a snail, or if it was a bug or something that didn't look good, but we got a reward for eating. Just like we get a reward for having sex, right? Because when we have sex, that means that we can continue to produce our young. So there's we can also feel good when we wake up, because we realize like we need sleep. So our body has these internal systems of rewarding us for doing the things that are going to feel good. So when we eat, we have this response that says, that's really good. Like, eating is great, because that means we keep fueling our bodies. Now, so what happens is we get rewarded for eating, which is a good thing. But now if we're eating a lot of sugar and flour, we're getting double rewarded from that dopamine hit. Now, there's a really great book. I can link it below. It's called Dopamine Nation. This morning when I was listening to this podcast, so she explains how the more that we use that, like our phones or that food, what we have like the balancing beam. Sorry, not the balancing beam. We have the teeter-totter. And so we use something to elevate ourselves. But what happens is that we need more and more of that sugar or of that dopamine, of that viewing time on our screens to get that same level of high. So that's why with drug addicts, that what used to take them 1 or 2 joints, they now need 10. Because your receptors, they need more and more of it to get a high. Okay, so why am I explaining all of this? Well, isn't it crazy when you think, oh, if I want to lose weight, all I need to do is just follow some rules that somebody else wrote, and I don't understand why? Well, I want you to get to the root of the problem. So again, I said there's only one reason we're overweight is because we're eating more food than our body needs. So now we have to decide, well, why am I eating that food? Why do I keep going to that food? What is it about, what do I want that food to do for me? So is it a distraction? Is it to get that dopamine? Am I lonely? So now I need a friend that, faithful? Like there's so many times during the day that I'll be like, I'd just like to have some popcorn. Popcorn is like a friend, right? It's like, it's fluffy, it's familiar, it's you can eat it mindlessly. It's associated with a lot of really great memories. Same thing with baking. It's like, oh, I should just go make some chocolate chip cookies. That sounds like a fun idea. Cinnamon buns. That sounds great, right? So we have these associations because we're trying to outsource our emotions instead of doing the hard work and working through our own emotions. So I want you to think about, what is a familiar pattern that you have with food? So is it when you're feeling lonely? Is it when you're feeling bored? Is it when you're feeling worried about something? Is it when whatever that is, okay? So as you think about that, and as you know about our biology, that we get this dopamine hit, how does that make sense that you are self-sabotaging with weight loss? Now, I want to take this one step further. And I think this is a really sensitive topic. So spoiler alert, I am going to be talking about sexual abuse. I'm going to be talking about being mistreated. And so if that is sensitive for you, then you can just stop this episode right now. Thank you for coming, and I will see you on the next one. But this is the part where, when we talk about this self-sabotage quiz, the 4 categories are low, shaky self-concept, internalized traditions, fear of change or fear of unknown, or excessive need for control. So all of those at the root is some unhealthy coping strategy to cope with things that are out of our control. So think about a little kid with divorce. If his parents got divorced, how many kids blame themselves? Okay. Now let's talk about sexual abuse. It can also be even emotional abuse. So a lot of times when something like that happens, we will blame ourselves. We will take responsibility for something that's not ours. It is not our fault. It is never your fault if you were sexually molested, ever. Even if you were flirting, even if you wore something suggestive, right? That is not your fault. Okay? So we have to really get clear on that. But when you have been sexually molested or violated or mistreated, then one of the ways that we try to cope with that, some people will go and overuse social media to drown it out. Some people will go become compulsive shoppers or drinkers or drug addicts. There's lots of different unhealthy coping strategies, but weight loss is one of those. And this is one of the reasons why weight loss is really challenging for a lot of women, is that when you have extra weight on your body, you're not as attractive, right? You're not like the supermodel, like Cindy Crawford or whoever the supermodels are these days, right? And so the girls that have, the more attractive, magazine-friendly kinds of bodies, they tend to get more of the attention. So when you're overweight, it does feel like you're more invisible. And we're seeing this a lot on social media where girls will say, oh, I've lost 200 pounds. And yes, my life is completely different because now people are paying attention to me. So the reverse is true. So if you are overweight, it could be a way to protect yourself so that you don't get the same level of eyes. And so when you start losing weight, more men will come up to you and start making comments, having conversation. You get more notice at grocery stores. People might open the door for you more. And this kind of attention actually feels very, very dangerous, because you could now become a target again. You could become a victim again. And so I'm very aware of this problem. And I'm also very compassionate and empathetic. And I really want to focus your attention on that, because you're probably not even aware that that's happening. And I want to share, I feel like I do need to share this, and I want to just normalize that this happens all the time. These patterns, I should say, happen all the time in various ways. But so I was sexually molested by a cousin when I was 6 years old, and obviously one of the most devastating things that's ever happened to me. And again, I thought it was my fault. I was accused. I was told if I told anyone, that I would get in so much trouble. And it was just it's a very stereotypical situation. And unfortunately, I'm one of those statistics. Okay. And then fast forward years later, I'm 6 feet tall. Okay. So when you're 6 feet tall as a girl, being that above average, you're just automatically going to get more attention. It's just inevitable, right? And so I'm getting more attention. I'm blonde. I'm, blue-eyed. And so I get attention in places, and I was, athletic build. And so I wasn't always sure what to do with the attention that I got. Then my parents got a divorce, which was a huge shock and a surprise to everyone. Everything was behind closed doors. To everyone, including their own children, their life looked amazing. We were the Brady Bunch, 3 boys, 3 girls, very active in our church. My dad was a very successful businessman. My mom was, had a beautiful home. Like we looked like the part. Okay. My parents did a really good job of that. And beautiful home, swimming pool, all of that. And then the divorce came, huge surprise. I then finished university, went off to be a missionary for my church for 18 months, which I loved doing. But during that 18 months as a missionary, I was subconsciously gaining weight. So I would just eat more patisseries, more pastries, like all the treats. I didn't realize how much weight I was putting on. It was very subconscious. Okay. So I don't know if any of you can relate to this. And so I came home from my mission. I want to get married, and I want to have all these, I want to do all these things, but I did not realize how much fear I had behind all of that. And why am I telling you this? Why is this important to know? Because this is self-sabotage. So I didn't intentionally wake up in the morning and say, guess what's a good idea? I'm really afraid about committing to a marriage or getting into a really intense relationship with someone because I don't want to happen to me what happened to my parents. I never consciously did that. I never consciously said, oh, well, if I eat a bunch of food and I overeat and I do this, then that extra 50 pounds is like a protection and a shield. No. And in fact, for years after my mission, so 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, I'm teaching school, I'm working hard, I'm working lots of Saturdays, working overtime. I had, lots of responsibilities. And it wasn't until I had a really good friend when I was 25, 26, and then thinking, why am I not having more relationships? What's going on? But subconsciously the whole time is the reason why I'm not having all these relationships is because I'm afraid of relationships. I'm not as conscious. And this is why I'm talking to you about this on this podcast. This is why I'm opening myself up, is because this is sabotage. It's subconscious. It's our way of trying to protect ourselves. And it's not as intentional because we are not aware. I was so afraid of this. Okay. And so it wasn't until a really good friend, trusted adult friend who knew me so well, said, Dara, why are you overeating? Why are you keeping on this extra weight? And I actually didn't realize how overweight I was. I'm being so truthful. It sounds so ridiculous, but it's true. And with her love and with her kindness and her approaching me, I was finally able to step on that scale and look at that number and realize and actually see myself and see that weight. I was kind of like subconscious. I could feel like the belly. I could feel that, that extra skin, but I didn't put it all together. Okay. And then, with that, her encouragement, I started to go to a therapist, and I started to work out the abuse from my life. I started to work through my parents' divorce. I started to give myself permission to work through all of those uncomfortable feelings that I kept using food to try to suppress. Busyness too. Oh my goodness. I loved being busy, because when you're busy, you don't have to think about those things. So what's been resonating with you as I've been sharing? I would love to hear it. So weight loss isn't about the food. So if you keep distracting yourself with, oh, I got to lose weight, I got to go count some calories, I got to go take care of this, I got to go take care of that, like follow this diet, look for this solution, it's wasting a lot of time. It's wasting a lot of energy, because it will never get you to the solution. It will never bring you to that place where it's like, okay, well, now I have to deal with the sexual abuse. Now I have to deal with my parents' divorce. Now I have to deal with the comments that boy made, and now I have to work through that. Okay? Because all of that dieting stuff is just a distraction. And it will never help you get to the root cause of why are you subconsciously sabotaging your physical health, which is your mental health. And then once the mental health gets better, the physical health will come. So that's my approach to weight loss. And I love this quote this is my own quote: you take care of the things you love. So the more that you address your issues, the more that you actually start looking at what's really happening, the more success you're going to have. I do have a 4-day masterclass that I would love for you to be a part of. It's workshop style. We work through it together, and you can start giving your brain permission to finally start looking at what's really going on. I can't wait to see you there. Register below.